All right, welcome everybody. It is Friday, June 20th, and we're back for another edition of the Florida EMS webinar, which is part of the Florida chapter of the NAMSP. And today I have a very big privilege of introducing someone who is a local hero, let's put it that way. Jon Vought is a captain at a local fire department, and he's doing something that is a very important thing to all of us, which is looking after the mental health and well-being of our personnel. And it's something that you may think is a bit controversial, although I have a feeling that by the end of this talk, you'll think of it as less controversial and actually very important. So without any further ado, hopefully that kind of whet the appetite for something that I strongly believe can help our personnel in the field with the difficult job that they have. So without any further ado, Jon, welcome to the Florida EMS webinar, and we appreciate you joining today. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antevi, and thank you everybody else for being here and giving me the opportunity and the time. I'd like to just give a little bit about my background and then kind of dive into what I wanted to talk about today. So, I'm Jon Vought. I started Rescue One CBD in 2020. We have a mission to provide, effective THC-free CBD products, and that led me down a lot of research and trying to understand how CBD affects first responders. And really, what it comes down to whenever I talk about this and trying to explain what CBD is, we should just go into the why to start. So, why should we even care about CBD or even talk about CBD for first responders? It's really three main things. There's lots of research on lots of different things, which we can get into if we have time. But the three main things I want to talk about is mental health, and I mean that in a very literal sense when it comes to brain chemistry, inflammation, and then the absolute number one that everyone always asks about and is concerned about, and that's sleep. So to talk about it, we do have to understand a little bit about the endocannabinoid system. So the endocannabinoid system works in conjunction with the nervous system and the immune system. It does regulate some aspects of the immune system, particularly with inflammation. And there are two main transmitters for the ECS. That's 2-AG and anandamide. Everybody calls it 2-AG because nobody wants to call it 2-arachidonyl glycerol, so we call it 2-AG. But those two things are really important to note for later. We naturally have cannabinoids in our body. They're circulating right now, endocannabinoids at all times, and those will come up when we talk about sleep. Most importantly, so when it comes to mental health, we discovered a few things about how CBD affects serotonin. There is a massive amount of research about CBD's impact on the 5-HT receptors and the fact that it can stop the reuptake of serotonin, so increasing serotonin endogenously. I know there's a lot of prescription medications out there that deal with that kind of thing. And where CBD can come in is there's a lot of research that shows CBD taken long term does not have some of these, untoward effects. It is very, very few side effects other than just feeling tired, having some effect on nausea in a bad way, sometimes for some people, less than 1%. And it can also, most importantly, affect other medications. Particularly the scary one that they always talk about is like Coumadin. So CBD affecting that can increase the level of Coumadin. So there's things that we do have to be concerned about when we're talking about any of these indications that I'm going to mention. And I got into this without even saying my disclaimer. I have to say I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. If there's any doctors in the room that want to jump in and talk about any points I'm making, please do. But the things I want to bring up is research based. All of the stuff that we've looked at has been researched on humans, as well as animals and in vitro. And what I was talking to Dr. Antevia about a little bit before this was the most amount of research that's been done on CBD has actually been done on pediatrics. So CBD's pharmacokinetic studies were performed by a company called GW Pharmaceuticals. This was going on more than 10 years ago now. They have the only FDA approved medication for CBD. It's just CBD and cherry flavoring, and it's for pediatric seizures, particularly to dangerous, seizure disorders, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and Dravet syndrome. CBD was shown to reduce overall seizures in over 50% of these kids without any untoward side effects. And in 10% of them, they actually eliminated seizures altogether. So, without, diving into a pool that I'm not eligible to swim in, I know that those diseases are very dangerous. I know that they are very hard to cure. And so CBD showed big promise in this, and it led to a bunch of other research. So, I went out of order there for a second, but basically, a lot of the research that came out of that study, and those studies, I should say, those three phases of FDA trials, led us to understand how CBD works in the body, and also some of the other benefits that it could produce. Because from those studies, we discovered its effect on serotonin. We discovered that it reduces reactive oxidative species and cortisol levels, like for inflammation. And it does work similar to solumedrol, and it can reduce cytokines. So that comes into play with firefighters and first responders who have a naturally higher level of inflammation or chronic inflammation. This is why people claim that CBD is good for pain relief. It's actually not. It reduces inflammation. So a lot of pain like arthritis and things like that, CBD can reduce inflammation and help with that. And then the one I really wanted to get to and kind of focus a little more on was sleep. So when we looked at our customers taking CBD and having these drastic differences in data, particularly with wearables, which I could not track down and grab. I apologize, but I could talk about how CBD does affect it. What we were noticing was that prior to taking CBD, they were lacking deeper sleep and REM sleep, and CBD helped with that. And there wasn't too much studies on that when we first got started, but this is an evolving science. I'm sorry, it's an evolving field of science, and since 2018, it's really spiked up because CBD became legal in all 50 states, and they allowed the door to open for more research. So what they noticed with sleep was it does reduce body temperature. It may reduce body temperature, which is important for sleep. It reduces that anxiety before bed, which is nice. But really, what the big thing was is there is a cannabinoid in your brain, 2AG, that they noticed will set the master clock of your circadian rhythm. So the area of your brain, the SCN that sets day and night, what is day and night is set. That chemical is 2AG, and they noticed that when you're sleep deprived, you have an all-time low of these endocannabinoids. So when you're in a well-slept state, those cannabinoids are at a normal level. There was a study called endocannabinoid signaling, has it got rhythm, and that basically showed the total amount of cannabinoids in the brain that were rising and falling as these states of sleep deprivation and sleep normality were happening, which was fascinating. So
Hi,
the
John.
yes, sir.
I know you had slides, but we're not seeing them. Did you want to, are you going to share at some point, or that's
Um,
going to come later?
Yeah, I'm gonna have that with our study. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
I
Gotcha.
have, and so all of these studies, these are all, some of them are meta-analyses, and some of them are, I have, I can reference all of them. I'm gonna put them in, I can put them in for the show notes so you guys can go through them. The studies themselves are really just NIH studies, and I don't know, there's not too much to pull from them. The most important thing to understand is that CBD does have a positive impact on these things. And with that being understood, I'm leading all this up to say the conversation around CBD has been one that it's dangerous, it can cause failed drug tests, that it's cannabis and technically it's not, and the understanding that it's actually a safe compound when made correctly, and that firefighters and first responders should be open to understanding the compound itself and to be open to use it as long as we understand the drug testing behind it. So, that brings us to the safety aspect. Now, when we do drug testing, we have basically a urinalysis that shows either a positive or negative. If it's positive, they send it off to a lab and they do liquid chromatography and see if there's any THC in there. CBD by itself does not cause a failed drug test. THC produces the metabolites that cause it. And so, if you have a purified product, you can, rest assured that you won't have a failed drug test. But that's hard to understand. So, the other problem we ran into is that the studies on CBD for drug testing were virtually zero. There was a one-off study done by Johns Hopkins that showed isolated CBD doesn't cause a failed drug test. Isolated vaped CBD doesn't cause a failed drug test either. And then nobody's actually dug in and done it. So we actually last year participated. We were the subject of a study between the University of Arcadia and then the University of Maryland Medical Center. And we brought in, we have 40 firefighters, just over 40 firefighters total. 22 were published in the study or produced in the study last year. We're waiting on it to be published, with the rest of them, still on deck to be tested. So they split up these samples between Arcadia and Maryland. I'll share my screen real quick and I'll show you kind of what it looks like here. But to take
So
the,
John, if you
yeah,
can explain, so they actually gave 40 some odd firefighters the product, and then the purpose of the study was to test them to see if it came back positive for THC,
exactly. Thank
right?
you. So what we did was we took firefighters. The University of Maryland and Arcadia sent me all of the boxes with urine samples and paperwork. I quickly discovered why they agreed to do this study with us is because they were giving me all the legwork and all the paperwork and all the mailing and everything else. And they're like, "Yeah, sure, we'll help you out. You just got to do all this stuff." So I got buried under all that, and I was very happy to help. But I want to quickly just thank Courtney Albert and Dr. Heather Harris, who took the bull by the horns on this, and they also brought in Samuel Krug from the University of Maryland, who's also going to be bringing in hopefully Dartmouth on this study this year. So, giving their credit where credit's due. Now, the important part of this study is that it's only on firefighters. They took this cohort that is for this presentation was 22 of us. We had, and I'm going to kind of skip because there are so many slides here, so I don't want to go through every single one. The cohort we have here is 22 firefighters. The collection process, if you can see here, like I said, they gave us these boxes. We just, filled out gender, weight, height, and that's important because the metabolism of CBD does, pertain to, your body size. THC and CBD tend to get stored more in heavier people. So the more body fat you have, the more they will store. And we also needed a representation of the fire service. So we needed male and female firefighters. We had 18 males and 4 females. And we also had ages were looking, ages were 24 to 55 years old. And they were mostly from South Florida, but also from around the US. So we did get a decent representation of the fire service. And we ultimately used 3 different kinds of tests here. So we took it's a biorad. It's basically, like a standard urinalysis. And we took a ELISA, which is just a different version of the biorad. And then we also had a liquid chromatography, which is the final. So we learned something that we hadn't learned about CBD before from this. And this is really important for everybody here is part of an organization that runs first responders. So this is extremely important. It wasn't understood that CBD could actually have cross reactivity to these ELISA tests. And if you look, there were several positive, basically 11 positive and 11 negative tests from the ELISA with people taking our CBD. And this is extremely important because the standard for drug testing shows that if you get a positive, you're supposed to send it off to a lab and to do a confirmatory test. Cross reactivity means you take something that shows up as a false positive. NSAIDs cause a false positive. Omeprazole causes a false positive, and B vitamins cause a false positive for THC, all three of those. So most people, when they take these tests, if they're, I can't even count how many patients I've seen that are on omeprazole, they'd probably show up for a false on these, but that doesn't mean that it's an actual false. You have to send it off. So when they send it through liquid chromatography, this is what we got. This is the final here, right? So if you look, I'll explain this. The first column, CBD COOH, that is the metabolite of CBD, right? So people that are taking CBD, these are the findings. Parent CBD, this is the actual CBD molecule that's still floating around. This means it's fresh. And then THC COOH. She put this slide together, and all of these highlights have notes on the side that were of talking. But I want to point everybody to number one here. If you guys notice, there's actually present detectable metabolites of THC COOH in sample number one. This was the only sample in our entire cohort that took a CBD product that wasn't ours. So this is super interesting to me because you have 22 samples given, and only one of them had measurable amounts of THC, and it wasn't ours. So it kind of furthers the point that this is now, it's 1.9 nanograms. A fail on this is 15 nanograms. So you're talking about several orders of magnitude more than this would have to cause a fail. So there are still no fails in this, but it's very interesting that, you could have someone take CBD that's not ours, produce 1.9 nanograms of THC metabolite. And if you look at sample number four, taking ours, the CBD metabolite's at like 457 nanograms, which is a ton. It's very, very, very high. And he still has no detectable amounts of THC, COH. So that was the general conclusion of the study. And then having that, I guess, reputation from those schools really kind of push the ball forward, that we have a safety profile for this. We understand that you can take it and not have a failed drug test. We do have a ton of background on research about how it affects, mood with serotonin, inflammation, and sleep. And firefighters are, there's a ton of us that take medication. There's a ton of us that are looking for improvements in those three things. But a lot of the medications have pretty dangerous or untoward side effects for being line firefighters. So I think what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, is that firefighters around the country are going to start taking CBD products out of curiosity if they aren't already. And I would assume everybody in your organizations, it's a not insignificant amount that are already taking it, for these reasons. So I'd love to, try to push the ball forward on more studies. And we have some that we're going to try to work on a little bit in the future. So that's kind of the quick rundown. I wanted to, I guess, outline the things that we have seen in the past, as well. So like our customers, the number one reason they take it, and I think this is relevant information for you guys. The number one reason our customers reporting taking it is for sleep. The number two reason is mood. So feelings of anxiety, or stress, especially in days coming off duty, they take it for relaxation. The number three reason is inflammation. So, older generation firefighters that are suffering from arthritis, for reduction in that inflammation. And then after that, there are people who have, random claims that seem to help them, maybe even some placebo effect, but those are the big three. So when we look at studies in the future, I think honing in on those things and trying to understand, the mechanism of action of them is extremely important. And also just not to be, so afraid of it, in the future, and understand that it is safe if made correctly. I'd love to put it back to Dr. Antevi or anybody else who has any questions, and
Yeah.
maybe I can dive in on something specific.
Yeah, John, great presentation. And the first time I met you, what I was fascinated by was the fact that most, if not all of these products before you came around have some level of THC in them. And you had to go through some pretty intense, like way of creating this thing to make sure that it had zero THC. So can you just quickly explain, and I do want to get other people in here, why is it so hard to do that? And why haven't people figured out that there's a whole group of people who may need this, but if they get a positive test, they're probably out of work for a week, until the tests come back and then liquid chromatography and all that other stuff. So can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, great question. The hemp plant naturally has 0.3% THC in it. And the trick is to refine that out so that there is zero 0.000% THC in that, like nothing detectable. Now, the reason it's difficult to do is because it's expensive. Also, I don't mean it's expensive like it's going to cost a lot for that process. It is difficult for companies that are established to retool to do that. And the market is so much smaller for them. So the biggest CBD companies in the US only sell to like larger populations. They're not really concerned about the US Fire Service. The vast amount of people taking CBD are not worried about a drug test. So if you Google right now, does CBD cause a failed drug test? There's going to be a lot of mixed information because typically CBD will cause a failed drug test because the industry standard for isolated CBD without any THC in it is 0.02%. And that's quite a bit when you talk about trying to find nanograms of THC in urine. And so the way we had to do it was contract with scientists who, basically were just doing this just for us and not for, large companies or whatever else. And a lot of legwork basically. So once we were able to do that and we refined it down, then we put it under intense scrutiny with using liquid chromatography and trying to prove that we had it at that level. But even still, you have people that are saying, okay, so I'm supposed to trust you that you have this at a safe level, which is why we, gave it to third party labs. But even further, we started that study. Because ultimately, Doc, you are correct. This isn't something when you talk to firefighters and you say, okay, we have this product out there that you can get that will have virtually no undesirable side effects and could improve your sleep, but you might cause a failed drug test and you're going to lose your whole job and your pension and everything else. Yeah,
Right.
that's not, they're out.
Right, right. So, excellent, great answer. So, let me bring in Tanner. So, Tanner, you're hearing this. You have that research state of mind here. What are your thoughts about what John's just presented to us?
Yeah, I'd say that as a clinical scientist in training, what I really want is the high quality double blind randomized controlled trials that establishes, in this patient population at a given dose, using objective metrics of things like sleep quality, et cetera, that this really works. And I think that, and I think that you've made a convincing case that your product is, and in general, the literature out there suggests that CBD is safe alone and in combination with THC. And there's some very small, limited randomized controlled trials that suggest potential efficacy for anxiety as well as insomnia using certain diagnostic criteria and using certain measures. Um, I guess the what question I would have for you is so with your product, what is the dosing strategy that you employ?
Great question, because if I'm sure you've read some of this stuff that the dose for this is actually biphasic. So if you take less than 25 milligrams, it's going to ruin your sleep. And you wonder, you're like, well, what the hell? So there is a wake promoting effect that they've noticed in rats and in humans that, when taking smaller doses, it has a wake promoting effect. And in doses above that, it has all those positive effects on REM and things like that. Our dosing strategy is with anxiety, it does take a minimum of 30 milligrams. Our smallest dose is 33. And with sleep, it's a minimum dose of 25 milligrams. our smallest dose is 33. So we kind of get in that range. But over time, people do tend to build a tolerance. So we have a sleep formula that has 66 milligrams, and then this way people can be a little more cost effective with it. But dosing is extremely important, and from all the PK studies that we've seen, you know, a lot of people underdose themselves. You see a lot of products out there with like 5 or 10 milligrams in there, and it's just does nothing. And some of these studies where they talk about anxiety, some people weren't getting touched until they get up to like 300 milligrams at a time. And the amount that you would need to take for it to be cost effective is crazy. So really, it's we would, in finding that it's safe, we would try to increase that dose even more now that we know. We have data to show that higher doses could benefit some things, but sleep. It's surprisingly small. You don't need a ton. If that answers your question.
Yeah, and that's again, I am no expert on psychopharmacotherapy or CBD, but just in preparation for the webinar, I went and tried to read some of the systematic reviews and some of the randomized trials that are out there, and I did notice that a lot of these trials are using 150, 300 milligrams or more as kind of single doses for these conditions.
Hmm.
And another thing I noticed is, you know, in terms of, we'll talk specifically about insomnia, but this also applies to things like inflammation. There's some studies out there that saying like, yes, this is good for, kind of self-reported quality of sleep, in patients with insomnia, but it's not superior to melatonin or other sleep aids. Similarly for inflammation, I think there's great laboratory evidence that CBD, decreases inflammation. But compared to other pharmaceutical therapies that are out there on the market that might even be, of a decreased cost or have a different side effect profile. Where's the evidence that CBD is necessarily better than currently available therapeutic options?
It's an amazing question in particular with first responders, because the the issue that I have, and this will lead into my hypothesis that I would love to, as a non-scientist, get some scientists to work on. Um, so melatonin is hit or miss for a lot of people. And from what I understand about melatonin, it's really great if you have a melatonin deficiency, but a lot of people take melatonin and get nothing out of it. And the other thing with natural supplements over the counter is, do you know what you're getting in there? So those two things aside, I want to talk about specifically first responders. A lot of first responders have sleep issues because of a disrupted circadian rhythm, and what we know, and this study that I referenced, it's called Endocannabinoid Signaling Has It Got Rhythm. They put together, they discovered, basically, this was in 2018. They discovered that the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the part of your brain that sets circadian rhythm, is regulated by cannabinoids. And if you have sleep deprivation and those cannabinoids are deficient, you are not going to correctly rebalance that circadian rhythm. Now, my hypothesis would be, so before I say that, to correct that, you need good sleep. The solution to insomnia is getting good sleep, which is, it sucks. That's a paradox. So how do you do it? Well, if you need several days of good sleep to correct bad sleep, that is effectively a death sentence of good sleep for firefighters, because we have a 24/48 schedule. So maybe you'll get good sleep in your 5 days on your Kelly, but every sleep expert I've interviewed has said you need more than that to correct those long, chronically interrupted nights. So this is where I believe CBD is working for firefighters, and this is anecdotal, I'll be honest, with our client base, uh, where it's working, where other medications are just basically sedating people to sleep. If we know that there's an endocannabinoid deficiency in sleep deprived firefighters, and we're taking the same cannabinoids that are increasing those cannabinoid deficiencies, I would assume that it's just a better way to attack that problem at its root. And while I'm not a fan of like the shortcut, the silver bullet, the one pill cure all kind of thing, this is a very specific issue to fire service and shift workers in general that I believe has an edge over other pharmaceuticals. Now, double-blind studies need to show this, and we have to actually do the proper amount of study. That we just need more research. But the preliminary assumption is there. I think that's where it gets. Now, for the general population, do people need CBD to sleep? Probably not. I mean, there's probably other things that you can do better. I would guess the vast majority of sleep issues come from lifestyle, not from some medical reason. You know what I mean?
Got that all my stuff.
So yeah,
So,
so it's a matter of just understanding the problem, doing more research. If that answers your question, it's a great question.
Thank you.
yeah, great questions. So John, my question is, and should there be, for example, if a fire department wanted to um go ahead and get this for their department, shouldn't it be like overseen by someone at the department? Wouldn't it be better if there's like some sort of oversight or approval that the fire department says, we want you to get better, we want you to get sleep, come in for an evaluation? Because like at some of my agencies, we have whole clinics, right? Come in for an evaluation, or you have bad sleep. Here's what we're going to do for you. Here's the regimen. Here's what we prescribe. We're going to give you a wearable, a watch, a ring, what have you. We're going to check in on you. So it's all being done through the department. We have like, we have chiefs now of health and safety. Is that an avenue that we should be going through?
It absolutely could be. I think there are a few steps that have to happen before that. But ultimately, I think it would be great because, right now when we try to talk about CBD to firefighters in general, you know, it's very taboo. It's not well understood. It's misunderstood in when it comes to drug testing. People still think it's cannabis. So to have a system set up, where there is an ability for you to go in and consult a medical professional and they can actually track progress, I think is the ultimate way to go. Yes. Right now, this is just our company talking to the individual first responder. And that's great for, one-on-one. And we've had thousands of firefighters use our product. Absolutely. But, one thing that's very true about this or any other substance, it cannot be 100% effective. There's no way. So there are people that are going to get to start using this product and that they're going to say, hey, this doesn't do anything, or it makes everything worse, or, et cetera, et cetera. And to have that tracked, to be just objective about it from a department level, I think would be really great too. Not to mention just the data we'd get out of it on a nationwide level.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring in, we have a great group here. I would love to hear um, Marv Wayne. You have a lot of experience with THC. I'm just kidding. Does anybody, I see, so Mark asked if you could put, oh, go
Peter.
ahead, Marv. Hey, Marv, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we were one of the first states to legalize THC.
Many years ago, right?
Yes, many years ago. We were right after Colorado, and everybody said it would be the end of the world. Others said it would be the beginning of the world. I guess perspective. As far as the fire service goes, there has not been a lot of, how do I say, overt use of THC products. My guess is there's a lot of covert, and most of those are CBD products. Excuse me, let me clarify, because there is a difference. So I have a question, Jonathan. If you're using THC as opposed to CBD, do you get a positive drug test? Because I still, for my pain management and other people, get mixed messages. So can you answer that question? Because I think that's an important question.
Yes, THC will cause a failed drug test,
Okay.
as well as all of the other synthetics. So now, especially in Florida,
Yes.
Mr. Wayne, I don't know where you're from, but you guys are in, I'm assuming Washington or Oregon or
Yeah,
Washington.
Washington State.
Washington.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and we can talk about THC use in the fire service. I'm fairly educated on it, but as far as all the synthetics, they also cause a failed drug test. So in Florida, you can go into any gas station, any vape shop, and buy what they call Delta
Mhm.
8 or Delta 10.
Yeah.
Those are basically synthetic versions of THC that produce the same metabolites. There's one metabolite in particular that it's tested for. It's THC COOH. It's a non-psychoactive metabolite that comes up after you've already digested CBD and it's hit your liver. So, it lasts in there for up to 30 days in some people and can last even longer if they're chronic users and have high body fat percentage. So the testing methods don't show whether someone is actively intoxicated versus somebody, took it a month ago, which is a flaw. But yes, THC absolutely causes a failed drug test, and so do the synthetics.
Yeah, so one last comment or question. One of the things that we're really working with now, of course, is PTSD. As Peter knows, I did a presentation on my own year or so ago. We're putting together a program, an Emmy-winning producer put together a movie called PTSD 911. And we're going to put a show with that and discussion
Heard
in the
about it.
fall. Yeah. Point or question. How does this relate to people with PTSD or evolving PTSD or promoting PTSD? Well, I think I know my answer. I want to hear your answer because you seem to have done a lot more work on it than I have.
I don't know about that, but the effect on CBD with PTSD is very minimal. As far as our understanding with it, I would point everyone to a study that was done on 9/11 survivors, where they tried to make a link physiologically of like what people are going through when they actually have diagnosed PTSD. They did notice an endocannabinoid deficiency of anandamide, which is, they call it the bliss hormone. And that was leading people down the route that like, hey, maybe we can supplement with, that cannabinoid, which is what CBD increases, to help with that. As well as, there is some promise with memory consolidation and trying to have people get good sleep and then correct that memory consolidation with PTSD. There's some minor research on that, but I'm talking about small case studies, nothing double blind. There really isn't a gold standard for understanding how it works. It's just one of those things where they said, hey, it's worth looking at. When it comes to THC, it's a little more complicated, because I think the effect of THC does have to have the effect of like relaxing people and allowing people to maybe fall asleep. But THC, after using it chronically, does tend to wreck REM sleep. It disrupts sleep architecture in its entirety. So it ends up being bad for sleep, which is a common misconception. But CBD helps. So what people are finding is that a combination of the two is probably the way to go with, high CBD, low THC combo. And trying to, tackle some of those problems like that. So, if it was, that answer your question? Is that?
I think it did, and actually just brought it was more the points that too I wanted to bring up the differentials between the products, the effects on drug testing, and then the effect on individuals. We are entering an area of biopharmacologic therapies for a lot of illnesses that our systems have generated. Um, as I said, when I told my story, I've been around since the day when no one ever asked for help, especially a surgeon, to the day now when we all need to figure out how we help each other. That's the bottom line. We need to be
Yeah,
here for all of us and for each other.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
Amen.
yeah. Times have changed. Let's bring in any other comments. I know we have. I want to wrap it up, and I'm going to give John the last word. And John, I wanted to know, maybe we spoke about this before, but have you connected ever with Daniel Patterson out of Pittsburgh?
I have not. I have friends that work for the Pittsburgh Fire Department.
Yeah,
I'm pretty familiar with their results. But I don't
because
I don't think I met Daniel Patterson though.
yeah. So I'll connect with him. He's like a tanner kind of person, but he works with sleep and he works on sleep, specifically in the
Oh,
fire
love to,
service.
yes. Yeah.
And he's someone who's been on the webinar. He's someone who, is very into this. And I think, to Tanner's point, getting somewhere where you actually have, whether it's an RCT or some sort of study within the fire service, because I think there are people listening today who are saying, hey, you know what? It's not going to hurt me. I'm not going to be tested positive. It works. But if you're a leader at a fire department and you want to go to the next step and say, I want to offer this after a sleep evaluation, after a health evaluation, and I want to offer this, then there's all the other questions that come behind that a good research study can answer, and potentially, instead of going one-offs, to the individual firefighter paramedic, you're now going to Coral Springs and Palm Beach County and Davie, and you're saying, hey, this is good for your people. Let me talk to your chief of health and safety. And now you can have a conversation. So I think that's where this would go, in my opinion, where it becomes a standard rather than I'm taking it kind of under the table, hoping that I don't get a positive drug test. I think I know the right dose and I don't want to tell anybody, right? Like I think we're kind of still living in the shadows a little bit, even though there's so many people hurting out there. And all of us, I mean, I'm looking at Charlie. Charlie, you did an overnight. Didn't you do an overnight last night or what? Was it last night?
Just till 3 a.m. It was great.
Right. There you go. Right. So like everyone on this call knows exactly what and so David, you wanna unmute and make your comment? Because you run a very big system. How would you think about this in Tidewater, EMS in Virginia? Go ahead.
Hey, Doc, can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead. Yep.
Yeah. So, so the point that you just made, I look at some of the leaders that I've been around, particularly in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but even running through the EFO program, a lot of times feel like these are decisions you may want to make, for your department or your agency, but yet working in a municipal government, there are oftentimes, again, other stakeholders, I guess, that would be involved, in the discussions and processes here. So obviously the role that occupational health has, and when you're looking at risk management and trying to determine, what liabilities that it potentially exposes either an individual, department, or the municipality themselves, becomes a little bit of a wicked or complex problem. So it'd be interesting to see, even if there is a passion for it, a support for, taking care of our responders in this method, how do we also have this conversation with those, in the occupational health industry that could also, become partners and champion that discussion.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, it's analogous in my opinion, and I've been in these meetings, so I know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about the HR people, the legal people, the people who are paying for insurance for driving $1 million apparatus, and now you're telling me, oh, that person's on CBD. Those are the people. We actually had a meeting because we wanted to provide ketamine to people who are acutely suicidal, and it was luckily we had some great leaders locally. But you should have seen the looks on the faces of the people who are running the city, kind of, from a risk perspective. They almost had a panic attack. But we said, well, there's people dying, killing themselves because they're not getting the right treatment quickly enough, and ketamine clearly works. Obviously, this is not in the same realm as ketamine, but I think that we as leaders need to look at all the options that are out there, and we have to protect our people, because at the end of the day, they're losing sleep. They're getting sick because of it. I mean, if you look at the rate of cancer, diabetes, all these chronic illnesses, a lot of it relates to your sleep at the end of the day, right? And so we have to look at the whole picture holistically, rather than, as Jon said, try to find a silver bullet to just say that one thing or the other. So I think that your point's very well taken. We're running a little over, but so Jon, I want to give you the last word here. You have lots of really smart people here. You have chiefs, you have medical directors, you have executives at hospitals I see on today. You have people in Canada. So give us the last word. And also, I did put the link to your site and your email, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
But give us the last word. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you're very knowledgeable, and I appreciate what you're doing for the health and wellness of our personnel.
Thank you. I'll say this. When I started this, I thought CBD was going to be kind of a fad. I wasn't sure how long it was going to stick around. It changed my life when I was using it after I had to come off of opiates from a really bad foot surgery. And we have been growing 50 to 60% every year for the last 5 years. And it's here to stay because I see it work. I see firefighters and first responders becoming more open to it. I wanted to finish by saying the comment that was just made about occupational health and having that understanding. I think it's absolutely critical to understand that, because most fire departments, I would guess most fire departments in this chat right now, whether we know it or not, allow our firefighters and our paramedics to be prescribed a benzo and still be line firefighters, my fire department included. And the reason I bring up benzos is so important. One, the pharmacologics of that, it lasts in your urine the exact same amount of time as CBD or THC. Two, there's no intoxication level. It has not been determined how much in your blood or in your urine causes intoxication. And three, there's no way to test for it to show you're actively intoxicated. The question that always comes up when it comes to safety or driving a truck or operating under protocols or all these things gets shot when you bring up benzos, because we are already doing it. And the policy that has already been written for that could basically just be copied and pasted. So I'm not trying to say that we should just allow firefighters to be high on duty. What I'm saying is we have to promote an understanding of policing these things. And CBD doesn't even come close to being anything like that. It's non-intoxicating. World Health Organization did a full review and showed there's zero effect on addictive properties, that it has no withdrawal symptoms. It seems like a no-brainer to me. I just know that we just have to understand it a little bit more. And the next steps would be, like Tanner brought up, absolutely doing the double-blind study. We need the gold standards. And I'm going to Science to the Station in November to kind of show this full study with the scientists that did this study. And we're going to be try to push for the next thing, which would be sleep, and hopefully many more. So I just thank you all for having this conversation with me to open the door for those things and to allow this conversation to happen, so we could probably take the bull by the horns a little bit more and do more with it. So thank you very much.
Well, listen, John, I mean, every thing that's difficult to do in life, it does require someone leading the charge and being at the front. And this is not easy what you're doing. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot of naysayers along the way, but that's okay. Just keep going. And I can tell you, I am in 100% support of what you're doing. And like Mike Humphrey from Lethbridge in Canada said, that sleep deprivation is, a carcinogen effectively. And I think we need to really start to look at that rather than let our people just go ahead and self-medicate, polypharmacy with what they're doing with benzos and other medications. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep up the great work, and then come back and let us know how things are going in the future. Appreciate
Thank you. It means a lot.